John and Michael, this is Jeff Major. I reviewed your email and the Donan detail to replace sheathing on flood damaged homes behind brick veneers. And I want to point out a condition that's related to their failed attempt at detailing a proper replacement related to insulation and pre-existing conditions and the putting the insured back to pre-existing conditions. So in a typical home where you have 2x4 stud framing, half-inch sheathing or exterior sheathing with insulation, R11, R13, there's a cavity that's usually 3.5 inches by 14.5 inches, assuming 16 inches on center, that has an allowance for insulation. R11 insulation in a 2x4 cavity, uncompressed, has an R value of 11. The R value of a 2x4 stud is 4.38, R 4.38. When the IBC and IRC and building codes are designed where they specify insulation in a home, in a residential home, to be R11, they're considering in their R11 requirement that there are 2x4 or dimensional framing lumber with 16-inch on center, with headers and double jacks and everything that is usual to a construction of the home. So while the code may call for R11, the R is technically lower because the areas that are wood that don't have as high of an insulating value. So now applying that to the Donan and what Donan is recommending, in addition, there's a vapor barrier that gets stapled on the inside. But you see there's 2x4s and there's insulation that goes in between. So basically what Donan is saying is we're going to add 2x4s to the existing 2x4s. We're going to sister them in. So now what happens is you're lowering your space. Now we can take batt insulation that does not have a vapor barrier on it, like in the picture. We can cut it and put in R11 to fit in that 3.5 inch space. Then we have to add a vapor barrier separately to the inside of the studs. But what's happening in this scenario is we have where we had two studs that were of R 4.38, we're doubling the amount of framing and we're reducing the R value of this wall. So now, holding the code aside that it's not what's assumed in the code of R11 or R13 or whatever was the code at the time of construction, you're changing the homeowner's heating and cooling abilities forever. So where somebody had a home that their air conditioning system could keep up with, or their heating system could keep up with, we're now changing the value of their home. We're diminishing the insulated rating of their home so FEMA could save $1. So it's not appropriate. It doesn't put the insured back to pre-loss condition. So this detail here is the Donan detail, but it's without the bridging for bolt ties. So keep in mind that Donan is adding another 2x to go horizontally at 24-inch sections. And for this detail that I'm explaining right now, hold aside that the code for brick wall ties is not just 24 inches apart. There's also around doors and windows 12 inches. So now you have to space within 12 inches of a door and window, which you're adding more dimensional lumber. So now what happens is we're going to take insulation, and if we use R11, and if we put R11 in a compressed cavity, we get 6.7. This is incorrect, the un part. But so we're now taking insulation and we're compressing it wherever there is a stud, or we have to notch out the insulation, all taking 5 to 8 times more than what it would take just to do a normal insulated wall, which is not included in any of the WIO or NFIP allowances. So This, we're further reducing the insured's R value of their wall. And this detail does not include the bolt that Donan is basically saying, we're going to take a bolt and we're going to put it into the brick and we're going to bolt it through. There's going to be a hole here that has to be filled, but what Donan's not considering is that you're now creating a thermal bridge from the brick to the interior of the structure. Donan does not properly detail or consider a true vapor barrier on the exterior of the sheathing. Donan does not consider a water plane. It does not consider overlapping proper flashings and flashing details. But what it's also doing to this house is now you're creating a metal thermal bridge from the brick to the inside of the wall. So now when it's cold out and there's humidity trapped in here because of the failed system, you're going to have cold that transfers from the brick through the bolt to the inside of the wall, which is going to rot this sheathing over time. Donan's detail is complete garbage. They're ignoring vapor barriers, they're ignoring rain planes, and they're actually completely ignoring the fact that they're changing the detail, the insulating detail, the insulating capabilities of people's homes forever. So that's just a short just on the Donan's failure and their modification of a home that is not to code with regard to R values and codes of R values, not only current codes, but to old codes. They're adding components to the detail that is going to cause long-term damage, which they're not going to insure for or cover for. So that's just a short on the insulating factor of the Donan detail.